Several years ago, we started this concept called Live Life Well, and we wanted to focus on mental health and life hacks. And what we're doing today with Dr. Thomas Folks with Burrell is we're kind of going behind the scenes, because when I put these segments together for TV, what really happens is I have to condense everything down to about 45 seconds to a minute. And when I do that, it's just the highlights. So today I really want to have a conversation like I do when we have an interview that goes into detail. So if people want to come into this and learn a little bit more, and today we're talking about group therapy. Great. So I should probably ask a question at this point about the group therapy. And we'll just start out with the really broad viewpoint. What are the benefits of group therapy?
Well, what aren't the benefits of group therapy? It's an excellent way to deliver mental health services to people with a variety of different kinds of issues. The same types of things that you might go see a therapist for individual therapy are going to be the things that you see a therapist for in groups. The advantages really are that groups, you've got not just that therapist, that facilitator who's going to help guide and shepherd you through the healing process. It's that you've got up to maybe 9 other voices in that room of people who are struggling with the same types of things, have other ideas, have great insight into what you might be going through, and can really feel that human connection. So group therapy is an outstanding way to get services.
And that is one of the comments I mentioned on Facebook, that we were going to talk about this, and that was one of the comments from a mom who lost her son. And she said, I'm not in group therapy, but I feel like it would be easier to talk with people who have lost loved ones. She wanted to know, is group therapy only available in Springfield? So she's outside of Springfield.
No, if the pandemic did anything good for us, it was that it opened up access to care. And so it opened us up to all kinds of virtual types of groups, ways that you're able to receive those services no matter where you happen to be, whether you're at home or work or in the car on a lunch break. You can attend a group with Burrell basically from anywhere. We do have some groups that are in person, of course, and we have hybrid groups as well. But you can attend a group almost anywhere.
Virtual, though, is it
right.
better to be in person for group therapy, or are there big challenges with virtual group therapy?
You know, I think a lot of it is personal preference for some people, because sometimes being in a virtual environment is more approachable for people. They're able to actually feel comfortable. They can maybe turn a camera off at a moment whenever they're maybe not feeling quite so confident in that time. Is it better to be in person? I think that depends on who you ask. Some people are much more comfortable in person and prefer face-to-face interactions, while others are happy to be on the screen and have the convenience of being able to do that from anywhere.
So from your perspective, what works best?
Oh, I'm an old school kind of guy, so I like in-person therapy a lot. In-person therapy for me is kind of where it's at. However, my whole world is also changing along with everyone else's. So providing services via telehealth and through video conferencing has really opened up all kinds of different and exciting therapeutic experiences.
So there can be challenges with the virtual, but if that's the best option, if you're in an area of our viewing area here where you don't have that service unless you drive an hour,
right,
that's going to be the way you choose to go.
If it were me, yeah.
If it were you.
Right.
Susie also wrote, what are the issues where this works best? I think she's saying I think all of us think of Alcoholics Anonymous,
right,
and group therapy there, but does it also work for anxiety, depression, issues like that?
Sure. I think that's one of the challenges that we have in mental health these days in terms of getting people on board with mental health through group therapy. Because the traditional sort of pop culture view of what therapy is one-on-one, one therapist, one client, 1 hour.
The couch.
The couch, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lay down and tell me about your mother. Therapy's not really like that. And so, yes, when we think about group therapy, we think about what we are fed from movies and television, which is a lot of group therapy is seen in terms of like substance recovery and things like that. Those groups are outstanding and fantastic, but there's an also and when it comes to group therapy. So there are tons of studies out there that say that group therapy is just as effective for conditions like depression, anxiety, trauma, eating disorders, personality disorders. There's all kinds of things that you can treat in group settings that's just as effective as individual work.
And are all those available through Burl?
All the ones I just mentioned are absolutely, yes.
Okay.
We have about doubled the number of group therapy services that are available over the course of the last year. We've been really putting a concerted effort towards delivering more access to services, faster access to services to clients. And so we have groups that run the entire lifespan from kids, adolescents, adults, older adults, covering every single spectrum of the mental health field. So if you have issues with depression, anxiety, eating problems, relationship issues, if you have a hard time coping with the holidays or would like to stop smoking, we have a group that's set up for that kind of thing, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
So if you're out there and you're thinking about a group, are you thinking about one that's led by a professional like you, or is it okay to be in a group, informal group, where everyone has that shared experience? Which one tends to work better?
It's a difficult question to answer because I think it comes down to the perception of the client that's sitting in that group. Some people have preferences that they only want to be in groups where everyone has a shared experience or has walked in the shoes of whatever the issue is that they're talking about. Other folks feel a lot more confidence when it comes to talking to someone who's a professional in the field, knows how to kind of work through particular coping strategies, and will give them very specific tools. All of the groups that you would receive through Burl would be led by a professional licensed facilitator, or maybe even two.
Yeah. One of the questions I also received from a viewer, not publicly, what about confidentiality? So I'm a person, say the person who wrote this, and they're concerned about sharing their issues in front of a crowd of people, and then that crowd of people going out and saying, well, I know about so-and-so. Is there something that's said at the beginning of a session that says, look, what we say here should stay here, or how is that handled? That's
a great question. It is an important thing for everyone to understand that whenever groups form, the early stages of that are a little bit of what we call role induction. So we tell people this is what it means to be in a group. Here are some of the rules, some of the parameters, the things that we want to make sure that you understand. So the things that are said in here, we are going to try to keep confident or in confidence between us. You don't want someone else telling your business, so please don't go tell others. We also talk about things like socializing outside of group, talking even after a group session privately, because the group dynamics are important. We want to make sure that everyone is part of that process, and so the group rules and role induction that happens at the beginning is vital.
You talked a moment ago about getting service to people faster, and if you're one-on-one, there's only so many hours in the day when a professional like you can talk to people one-on-one, especially if it's an hour.
Right.
So is this part of a plan across the nation for Burl to get to more people faster, including group therapy? Not just, as you mentioned, that it does work, it does help.
Right. Well, I mean, I read a study here recently that said in the US, if we were to try to meet the psychological needs that we know exist, that we would probably be able to save about $5.5 billion in service costs. That, on top of the fact that it would take about 35,000 fewer professionals like me to be able to provide those services. And with the shortages in terms of like being able to find and get into a provider quickly, yeah, group therapy is an excellent option. It's what we call a triple E service. That means that it's efficient, it's effective, and it's equivalent, meaning it's the same as the type of services that you're going to receive in individual work.
Another question came in about reimbursement, and I don't know if you can answer this, but the person mentioned that sometimes dealing with their health care, it's difficult to get insurance companies to see mental health care as important. Is it going to be difficult to get health care reimbursement for group therapy, and are the rates the same?
Typically, group therapy services are less expensive than individual services. As far as individual plans and things like that with insurance, it's a very difficult question to answer. I can speak for Burl to say that we have an excellent benefits and eligibility department that will look into that for our clients, and we have a lot of programs that help people who might not be covered in those ways. So the access to care is certainly much greater when it comes to group services, but the specifics in terms of like whether or not it's going to be reimbursed by an insurance company, that's a little bit more individualized to the person.
Depends on your insurance company.
Right.
And it sounds like this person has been in a little bit of a battle to get mental health care coverage.
Sure.
Do you hear that often?
Not often. Usually people are coming in and they're excited to be a part of our groups. We've had some group participants who have, said, can we keep coming? Can we have another round of this 8-week group or whatever? And so, no, we don't hear that a lot. I don't hear a ton about the services not being reimbursed.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You mentioned 8 weeks, so there's a start and a finish to a lot of the group therapy?
Sometimes. Some groups, depending on how they're structured, we have what was called open and closed groups. Some groups that are open, meaning that clients can come in and out at different points and the curriculum or the topics sort of rotate through. Some of those can last, can just run continually. Other groups are going to be more specific and based on a very defined criteria or a defined curriculum, a set of modules that are being presented. They can be anywhere from 8, 10, 12, 16. It just really depends on what the program is.
We mentioned confidentiality a little bit ago. So I understand you can't give names, but you can kind of give me a broad example. If you have a recent case where somebody came in and 8 weeks later, they said, you know what, this has helped me. Do you have a case like that?
Well, I can tell you about cases from people that I work with in helping to administer these group services where they're telling me that I'm answering questions like, this has been such a life transformative experience for me, I want to keep coming. Can I share my phone number with other group members? How can I continue to have this type of connection that I'm feeling in therapy once this is through? And I hear that time and time and time again. So you can see people sort of shift from the beginning of maybe even not really knowing what group therapy is to feeling and being a champion for it, not just within that therapy, but outside of that too.
So for someone like you who leads sessions like this, that must feel...
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's great, yeah. What's better though is that when I sit in a group and I just say, okay guys, this is what the topic is today, who wants to start? And then I can sit and simply watch these people connect to one another and help each other. And there's so little that I have to say, and there's such healing that happens. Or whenever I hear from another client that says, you know, what really stood out to me today was something that Joe said, something that Paul said really struck home with me today, and that made all the difference. It's fantastic to see how healing can happen just by that connection that's made in that room. It's amazing.
It must feel that way. And how do we find this? So if I'm in West Plains, or I'm in Rolla, or I'm in Lebanon, and I want to get involved, how do I find it?
The easiest thing to do if you're wanting to get involved with Groups with Burl is to call our main number, 417-761-5000, and get in contact with our Connections Center team. They will go through an intake process with you, and we have talked with them. I have personally sat in on meetings with them, and Burl has a groups first mentality. If there is a group that this person could benefit from, we want to make sure that that's offered to them first. And so it's that simple. No matter what your issue is, no matter what might be going on, we're going to be trying to set you up in some kind of a group. Here's the great thing too, is that sometimes people don't want to be in a group. They want that individual session.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's fine. That's great. Group isn't for everyone. And yet, our group facilitators know this. And so when they recognize that this might not be the right fit, we're making those referrals right away and helping to shepherd that person into an individual service that's going to fit them better.
And that can make all the difference in that
Can make all
person's
the
life.
difference.
Again, it's not going to work for everyone.
Right.
If you get into a group, you see an individual who doesn't seem to be clicking with this, how do you handle that on your end? Who is that person that you say, you know, I think you would benefit from one-on-one?
Sure. I think for me, what I do is just pull that person aside, or I have a conversation with them afterwards and say, how are you feeling about group? Is this a good fit for you? Is this something that is working for you? I'm hoping that they're going to have the insight and have that, that sense that I do really care, because I do, and they're going to say, yeah, this isn't really what I'm looking for. From that point on, and say, okay, is this something that you want to continue to try? Is this a part of like you just becoming more comfortable, or do we need to make a referral out to an individual therapist? It's very simple from there.
I have questions on here that I haven't, because we're just having a conversation, which is great. I want to get to a couple more and then we'll wrap it up. One of the questions is, how do you deal with a dominant personality in the group? So you have someone who's, unlike the individual it's not working for.
Sure.
So maybe they're the quiet one. You have the dominant one who's doing all the talking and not stopping, and is that benefiting everybody if you have a dominant personality like that?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Okay.
It's such a judgment call on how that comes off to the other group members. Like we said before, there are sometimes people who really want to hear from that person that's walked in those shoes. Those people can be a real benefit. That come with opinions and things like that.
Okay.
So then the facilitator becomes kind of a coach and helps to take what that person is saying, acknowledge those parts, and maybe redirect it into a different way, but always trying to facilitate that there be some interaction between the group members. Group isn't a class where you've got a teacher who's going to lecture. It's an interaction. It's a mutual healing process.
A conversation.
It's a conversation.
Kind of like we're having today.
That's right.
And I'll throw in one more of the questions we got. I think we've kind of covered this. Who should seek group therapy? And we've gone over that, the question that
really
came in.
anyone who is not just opposed in all ways to going into group therapy. There are studies that say that even things like social anxiety, people who have social anxiety benefit as much, if not more, from group experiences. So the one thing where I don't want to talk in public, I don't want, I have this, anxiety about being around other people,
Yeah.
still do well in groups.
Okay. Well, if people have other questions that we haven't covered, and if you don't want to put that on my public Facebook page, I understand. You can message me.
Okay.
I'll make sure you get the question and we'll pass it along to
Sure.
Tom Folks here with Burrell. And thanks again for coming in and having this conversation with us.
Thank you.
We
Thank you very
appreciate your
much.
time.
All right.
Thanks for watching.